Welcome to another episode of Anxious Black Belt. Today, my guest is Nick Girard, if I say it properly.
Yeah, that's right.
Nick is my friend and sparring partner and training partner in our dojo, and it's frustrating because with every day he's getting better and catching me with my own techniques better than I do it myself. Hi, Nick, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you, man?
I'm very good, thank you. Can you take us through your little journey in martial art? Because you started quite early. You done Goju, you done Shorin Ryu, you done Hapkido, and now you're training with us. So how did it start it and how did you get into martial art?
Yeah, it was a long time ago. So this is gonna be a protracted story, but so my dad was quite a small guy and got picked on a lot when he was little.
Mhm.
He realized that my brother and I were also probably going to be small. It turned out we didn't end up being that small in the end, but he was worried about us being picked on, and so he worked. He was a nuclear machinist, built nuclear submarines, and at the shipyard where he worked, there happened to be this old Vietnam vet guy who trained Goju Ryu. Um, so my dad got introduced to him through some of the people at work, I think, and brought us to try this class. The man's name was Dan Greenlaw. Um, I was really young when I was with him. I was 5.
Mhm.
Um, but he was adamant that he wouldn't teach kids. I don't do kids. And my dad said, "Well, my kids are a little different. They're really well behaved. They're really disciplined. Like, if you don't mind, could you give it a shot? And of course, if it doesn't work, then I understand." Um, and yeah, it ended up working out pretty well. I mean, he didn't tailor the class to us in any way. So I was 5 years old, doing, I mean, it felt like ages, but it was probably 10-minute long exercises in Shikodachi where he was coming around and smashing us with the Shin Ai and stuff. Um, So it was fairly intense, kind of old school Okinawan training style, um, and it helped us a lot. I mean, it was the foundation of my self-control and discipline and stuff. Growing up in a household that was really chaotic. My mother is has mental illness. She has dissociative identity disorder, at the time called multiple personality disorder. So
Mhm.
she was an incredibly volatile person. Um, and I don't think that was the intention of the training in the start. I think it was genuinely just my dad didn't want us to get picked on. But it ended up providing a framework for my brother and for me, um, just to understand the chaos going on around us and to always find a way to ground ourselves. I mean, learning as a Western kid growing up in Maine, in America, you don't you don't stumble upon meditation and breathing and things like that.
Mhm.
Certainly not in the early 80s. So being exposed to that kind of stuff as a 5-year-old kid just gave me an easy way to ground myself and regulate when things got difficult, understand patience and discipline and the idea that things don't come easily. You have to work hard to acquire skills, and that's something that I've carried through my whole life. I think it was quite foundational for me. Um,
Interesting you say that. I literally had a conversation on the phone now with a parent from my son's school.
hmm,
Same thing. Could you teach kids? And I'm saying, I don't teach kids
yeah,
because they have a problem and they think that martial arts is going to help. So it's nice to hear that you think that it was really beneficial for you as a young child.
yeah, and I think that if it had been a more modern experience of a child training in martial arts, I don't think it would have been as helpful.
Hmm.
At least my image of what a kid's martial arts class is now.
Yeah, I don't
Um,
think so. Anybody hits anybody with a stick, so
but well,
it's
this
a
is
little
it,
bit
right?
different.
Exactly. I mean, a really funny if you'll indulge a little story. I think I was 6 and I was training in the class, and we're doing typical sort of line work, marching up and down the dojo, doing techniques and stuff, and I really had to wee. So I raised my hand, Sensei, can I use the bathroom? No, we're training.
Mm.
When the training is done, you can. Okay. Kept training until I literally just couldn't hold it anymore, stopped dead in the center of the dojo and pissed my pants in the middle of the school.
Mm.
And then he went, whoa, 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 what are you doing? And he scoops me up and he brings me upstairs and he's talking. I hear him talking to my dad.
Mhm.
What did he do that for? Well, he told you he needed to go. Well, I didn't know he meant like now.
Mm.
And my dad said, when my son tells you he needs to do something, he means it.
Mhm.
Like I was a different, it was a different level of discipline and a different kind of environment entirely, I think.
Mhm.
And I don't know that every kid would have been like that. So I think that's something particular to me as an individual. I mean, I don't even think my brother would have been like that.
Mm.
So me bringing that kind of me just being me, and then
Mhm.
entering into that school environment where we weren't being treated like kids, we were being treated like everyone else, kind of worked.
Mhm.
I think he did try and have some other kids come in, and it didn't work. So it was yeah, it was quite lucky that it worked out that way. I trained there. I think it was probably 3 or 4 years that I trained there. We progressed quite slowly.
Mhm.
The guy was really technically excellent, and that was really important for all of us. So a lot of my just basic karate technique and foundational stuff came from training with Dan. Um, he then closed his school, and his highest ranking student, named Dean French, opened a school of a very similar ilk in the
Mhm.
town next door. So we followed him. We followed Dean to his school. I trained for a while with him as well, and then entered into my, preteen kind of era where I started getting frustrated. I was a like what we called Sankyu Ho, so like a green belt with 3 stripes, just on the cusp of brown
Mhm.
belt. And he wouldn't promote me because I wasn't old enough.
Ah, okay.
As an adult, I understand what he was getting at. As a 12-year-old, I did not understand what he was getting
Mhm.
at. Um, so frustrated with that lack of promotion and progression, I left. And I was getting into other things, and that's when I started doing music stuff and noticing girls, and it was that kind of age where my focus was easily shifted elsewhere. Um, and then stuff at home was definitely not better at that point. I went through probably 3 or 4 years that were really difficult. My father was incredibly ill and had been his whole life, had a massive life-saving surgery in and around that time. Stuff at home got shaken up a lot.
Mhm.
Um, and so in the middle of high school, I just really desperately missed training. I mean, I had a punching bag at home. I had all my, we did a lot of Kobudo in my original school, so like I would practice with my sai and bow and stuff all the time growing up. Um, Still did kata and just beat the ever-loving crap out of a punching bag whenever I
Mhm.
needed to do that. Um, I attribute my the relics of my good kicking to having that punching bag around all the time my whole life. Um, Middle of high school, just needed
Mhm.
to get out of the sort of pressure cooker that I was in. And so once again, my dad knew a guy, actually someone he had gone to high school with, who was a really high-ranking Shorin Ryu teacher um, in the town next door. And so I started training there. Really excellent practitioner. His name was Greg Lazarus. And we did this kind of, it's not super underground or anything, but it was a quite unique version of Shorin Ryu. At the time, it was called Kenshin-kan. Now it's been renamed Matsumura Seito Orthodox or something like that. Um, Headed by a guy named Fusei Kisei in Okinawa. Um,
Mhm.
Very upright style, really like promoting natural stances, really leaning towards the Hakutsuru kind of Shurite
Mhm.
kind of old style stuff. Um, did quite a lot of pressure point things, even though we weren't told that's what they were, and we didn't. It wasn't some big like George Dillman Q show thing. But it turns out, as I'm seeing it now in retrospect, like, oh, okay, cool, and we were aware of this and aware of that, and
Mhm.
um, really different. I liked it a lot. I missed some of the. We didn't do the classes in Japanese, whereas I did when I was
Mhm.
little. So I kind of missed some of that connection to like the Japanese culture. It felt slightly more Americanized, which I didn't love, but no problem. Um, and again, the teacher was outstanding as a practitioner. Um, I don't necessarily think he was an amazing teacher,
Mhm.
but if you just, I happen to be a good visual learner, so if I watch people do stuff, I can then translate that to my own body. And I spent a lot of time just watching what he did instead of listening to what he said.
Mhm.
Um, and in that class, I met someone who ended up being like quite a close personal friend of mine, and a real mentor at a time when I desperately needed like a parental kind of father figure in my life. His name was
Mhm.
Bruce Pease. Bruce and I got on in every way. I mean, he was 20 years older than me,
Mhm.
but we had gone to the same high school. We did all the same sports in school. We ended up being rock climbing partners and stuff. Like we were just real kindred spirits. And so the martial arts and karate led me to him, which was a massive anchor for me at a time when I just really needed it. Um, so in that way, I found myself where the martial arts ended up being the conduit for me getting the kind of guidance that I needed, um, leading me into university and stuff like that. Once I got to school, well, it was through Bruce that I started doing Hapkido as well because he was one of the only people in our school that got permission to cross train because
Oh wow.
this was in the mid 90s
Mhm.
where it wasn't quite like it is now. It was you we still and my school in particular was
Yeah.
very we're the real true Matsumura, like you don't want to learn anything else but this. This is the real deal. So cross training was not an overly welcomed thing.
Mhm.
But Bruce was so damn good, and he was so cherished at that school that his interest in cross training just kind of couldn't be denied.
Mhm.
Um, and specifically, what he liked, we used to do a lot of tuite in our Shorin
Mhm.
Ryu, but we did it really badly. It was really a really fun, like basic really crude version of these joint locks and stuff.
Mhm.
And so we would do them in class, and of course, nothing would ever work. And like heaven forbid anybody tried to pull off something in sparring. We did like fairly live sparring. It wasn't full range. We did takedowns, but we didn't do anything on the ground.
Mhm.
You're not going to catch somebody's fist and throw them into a Cote de Gaisha. Like it's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
And we all learned that very quickly. And Bruce just found himself thinking there has to be an actual application for these things, and ended up finding this Hapkido school that particularly specialized in that side of Hapkido, all the joint lock stuff. And so what he was doing was learning those things, bringing them back into our school, and refining our tuite techniques with the fundamentals of what he was learning in Hapkido, where things actually started working, understanding how the joints actually stack and the way that the anatomy can force the body to do certain things. Um, so I got interested in that through him. I took a really cool judo class in uni because I was like I want to learn how to fall better.
Mhm.
I want to understand more of the full range of how this stuff works. I did gymnastics in high school specifically so that I could just feel more acrobatic and move around better when I was sparring and stuff. I grew up in the Van Damme era of martial arts. Uh, so being able to do splits and huge flying kicks and all this stuff was super alluring to me. So found my own ways to kind of cross train and develop myself physically. Um, yeah, and that. brought me through uni. I tested for my Shodan in Shorin Ryu. Um, I really liked the art. I really enjoyed it. The politics in the school were outrageous. And ultimately it was through that. And I mean, Bruce had been there for years and years before me. And so I kind of through how close I got with him, I adopted his jade for the politics.
Mhm.
So I think I was a bit unnecessarily jaded given my time there, just because I was
Mhm.
spending so much time listening to Bruce bitch about stuff. So by the time I got my Shodan and realized, like, oh shit, you're right. Like we have one black belt class a week and we don't even do anything.
Mhm.
And otherwise you're just in class standing up at the front doing basic exercises so the white belts can watch. And it was
Mhm.
like, oh, you're right. I'm not going to learn anything else. Um, so I kind of let it slide. And like I went to uni far away. So being able to come back for class was a bit tedious and um, continued training a bit on my own just because it was such a part of my kind of daily routine, waking up and doing kata and getting my body moving. It was the way that my body had learned how to move since I was 5. So I had a lot of muscle memory programming and mobility stuff just from a really young age. So it stayed a part of me for quite a long time, probably until I was 25 or 26. And then life just kind of went in a different direction, and I stepped away from it for a long time.
Mhm.
Um, I'm American. Met my wife. I ended up becoming a musician, um, which is sort of my other life passion. Met my wife while we were both on tour in New York City. She's British. Um, we became friends and then did some work things together, and then that kind of became more romantic. And we dated for a year transatlantically, which only worked because we were both touring all the time. And so what we would do is
Yeah.
like, oh well, I'm on tour in Texas, so I'll fly home through Boston so I can hang out with you for a couple days before I head off to somewhere else. And we managed to see each other like once a month.
Mhm.
Um, and so that was cool. Moved to England, got married. We had our son. Um, and then a couple years into having him, we got his autism diagnosis, and that did not get any easier. Um, and then once he got old enough to start becoming physical, um, I started really struggling. A lot of what he was doing physically with me had strange, like, reverberations of my childhood, but kind of from the other way around. So it was like
Mhm.
doing things to me that my mother used to do to me. And it created this very strange uh, emotional feedback loop for me.
Mhm.
Um, and I was sort of instantly feeling physically dysregulated, and that I needed to find some way to process all of this emotion that was now welling up inside me that I didn't have a release for anymore.
Mhm.
Um, I live a stone's throw away from where you used to be teaching,
Mhm.
and I had seen the school several times just in passing, walking by the place at night, and thought, oh, that's interesting. But like, I've got the family at home and work is
Mhm.
tough. And I mean, I don't know how I would ever make time for that sort of thing. And, I think that, I mean, it was nearly 20 years that I had stopped training. So it's like, well, I think that time's probably passed. But I would sort of watch longingly, as I walked by. Um, and then, yeah, it was like the day before my 45th birthday. I just decided, like, no, I'm really struggling and I need to find a way to process everything that's going on for me. And karate was always the thing that worked before. So
Mhm.
before I, go on some massive search to try and find the new thing that's going to suit my life, what I believe my life to be now, let me see if this old thing works. Um, And I wrote to a couple different people. It seemed like all the schools that I wrote to were defunct by the time I wrote to them. Because this was, it's not long after
Mhm.
COVID stuff, and I think a lot of those things changed. People don't update their websites. So I even like drove to a church to a class that I was certain was happening. Absolutely not
Mhm.
happening. Didn't exist anymore. It's like, oh, okay. Um, yeah, and then I remembered your class and thought, oh, let me just see what this is about. And 2 years later, it it changed. It's completely changed my outlook on parenting. I think it makes me be the it makes me be the kind of or yeah, it makes me be the kind of parent that I aspire to be. I don't always get it right, and it isn't easy, but having consistent training and being able to just flush my system of all the things that build up over the course of the week is like an instant reset for me,
Mhm.
and keeps me able to be much closer to my best. Um, so yeah, really, really long way of answering that question, but um,
Yeah. Well, I'm parent too. Obviously, my kids are not diagnosed with the spectrum, but everybody's got a different issues,
hmm,
and I know how hard it is to be a perfect parent all the time,
yeah,
right? We all getting it wrong. I getting it wrong pretty much daily after 7 o'clock a.m. when they wake up.
yeah,
But it's a completely different set of challenges, and what you have with your child and what I have with the child. And I remember you saying on the barbecue that it's interesting for you to see how my kids behave because it's a completely different set of issues and problems.
yeah.
So it's just in karate for me that's the same as for you. It just helps me to be uh have a reset, have an outgoing that sparring. You don't have time to think about anything
Yeah.
else. Just the person who want to punch you, and you just
Mhm.
get rid of all that stress and starting back. I want to go back a little bit to your beginnings of the. Have you had problems with adjusting from a Goju to Shorin Ryu? Um, because it seems for me, when you're doing your katas and you're playing with different versions of the kata, it seems flawless. That like you've got two disconnected parts of you,
Mm.
and you can switch to Goju to Shorin, which my wife is like that. She can switch between a kung fu, aikido, and karate, but she struggles with mixing it. But
Mm.
you, on the other hand, can have those two separate. And now, when you're training with us, we're trying to get you to mix of those two, and it seems to be working as well. So it seems like you've got that unique ability to keep things separate, but when you need on demand to mix them together.
So yeah, I thought about this a little bit, and I definitely recall. I mean, Goju Ryu is much more circular.
Mhm.
Um, I learned it as a little kid, so a lot of the actual detail that I'm now kind of seeing through like really good content creators and just having access to great people and them being able to talk about things more freely, I didn't really get the finer details of it. But when I was young, it was much more circular, lots of open hand techniques and stuff, and I really liked all that stuff. And then when I moved to Shorin Ryu, it's very linear. It's not as circular, um, more natural, shorter movements. Lots of hip stuff and like really snappy linear techniques. And when I was introduced to that, I really missed some of the more what I would have described as like elegant movements that I had in Goju Ryu. And so even when I started Shorin Ryu, I started blending those two things a little bit. So my Shorin Ryu in that school didn't quite look like everybody else's.
Mm.
And I think anybody watching it from the outside would have thought like, oh, Nick's just putting a stylization to what he's doing. He's putting a little more amplitude in that block or
Mhm.
whatever. But even then, not really knowing the finer details, I was already thinking about, well, there's got to be function to the way this block moves as opposed to that one, and I don't want to lose that, and was sort of
Mhm.
experimenting with how to blend those two things already. And so then as I started training with you, because Kyokushin and the sort of Ashihara stuff reminds me more of the Goju stuff.
Hmm.
Um, it's kind of let me continue that experimentation that I started from the other direction. So now I'm sort of rewinding back to some of the Goju Ryu impulses, but finding ways to put the Shorin Ryu back into it.
Hmm.
Um, and so in my mind, I'm not separating the two things.
Okay.
Um, I'm finding the places where I feel like they marry together.
Hmm.
And the moments where like, oh, that's interesting. It's expressed in this style in Goju, but that same exact thing is expressed in this way in Shorin Ryu, and starting to see the links between the underlying purpose there and just the expression versus application stuff.
Hmm. Cool. Yeah, I think because for me it looks very different because maybe I'm kind of always been in the middle, so I'm not as excellent as you in the kata performance and quality of the techniques. I think that you started as a young child with a
Mm.
really good technical teacher. We've always been on a kind of Kyokushin, do it hard, make it work. Don't
Yeah.
worry too much about technical crispness, if I can use that word.
Mhm. Yeah.
So I don't see that when you do your Shorin Ryu, I really admire the way you're doing it, and I wish I could do with that crispness and stuff. But I see like two different. That's why maybe I see it as a separated,
Mm.
with you getting into the finer details of it, and the feeling the movement is different than seeing the movement, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It might be a minute change that I don't pick up visually, but you feel it different. And I've got the same with me when I describe sometimes to people, you're doing like this, and this wobbai is exactly the same, right?
Mm. Yeah.
Because I feel where I'm putting my hand instead of just doing the movement. So, uh, how did you find the process of? Yeah, we've been working on your Seiyenshin, and you started to kind of changing the stuff. How long it took you to allow yourself? I know that teachers saying something, do something, but then internally for myself, it takes some time, and it took some time for me to allow myself to be on a level that I can change
Mm.
or that I do for myself. If- Have that been a issue for you, or you just easygoing and then just like, okay, let's do it?
Yeah. I definitely don't think that I am ready to do that. um, it's particularly my journey, like it kind of broken up in little chunks and things. It's not like, I mean, I have technically I've had karate with me for 40 years. But I don't think that my skills reflect those of a 40-year practitioner.
Mhm.
Because of the age when I started, the amount of time that I took off, et cetera, et cetera. Um, so there's a lot of imposter syndrome being fought most of the time. Um, and ultimately with Seiinshin, I really like the Goju Seiinshin, first of all.
Mhm.
Um, and I really love doing the Shorin Kata. Wildly different things. For anyone who doesn't know, Seiunchin doesn't exist in the Shorin canon of kata. Um, so when you suggested, oh, what would it be like to change this to make it like more like your Shorin kata? Um, the way that I got over that hurdle of, well, I'm not good enough to do that. The way I got over that was to reconcile, like, well, I'm going to interpret the kata the way I see the kata right now, who I am, what my karate is at this exact moment. What do I think the applications of these movements are? How can I express those using Shorin movements that I know from other kata? I don't think I don't understand the finer details of shurite enough to know how to express movements through my own interpretation. But I can look at other Shorin kata and go, ah, that feels like the same idea, and they do it this way. So I'm going to borrow that expression for this move, knowing that that's how I'm interpreting this application. Um, and once I let myself do that, it the kata sort of unfolded for me
Hmm.
because drawing on almost like drawing on a vocabulary from a different alphabet or something of a different language, it just gave me instant things to plug in. Um, and yeah, when I do the kata, it feels like I'm doing a Shorin Ryu kata. So from that point of view, getting me into that kind of mindset and those body mechanics, like it worked.
Hmm.
Um, I'm certain that there are limitations to my interpretation of it because I'm specifically basing it on like one or two applications of a certain move.
Hmm.
So, it surely is a kind of restricted snapshot version of what that kata can mean. But it feels reflective of me in this moment of my development. So it feels honest in that way.
Yeah, I think that's spot on analysis, and we all only can do karate at the time we are on a journey, right?
Yeah.
In 10 years' time, it's gonna be completely different, or maybe not.
Hmm.
But you do what you can at the time that you are. I think. Did you? So when you came to us, I think you didn't have much of a freedom in Bunkai and applications.
No,
How
no,
did you
none.
found that, and how was the transformation and setting up stuff in your mind and the process of adjusting?
Yeah, I mean it's a massive adjustment. Um, Presumably anybody who started doing karate in the 80s or before the practical movement and even just the concept of cross training became a little bit more accepted. Um, like karate, the kata bunkai was not really a thing that we focused on at all. And if you did, it was quite a prescribed set of contrived movements that it wouldn't take a rocket scientist to be like, well, but nobody's ever going to do that to you, are they? Like
Mm,
all of that typical um the typical critique that you get from people online critiquing the uselessness of karate is what we all I think were faced with
mhm,
back then. Just going, well, I don't know if that makes any sense. And then um like I don't remember which kata it was that you first showed. Maybe it was Nahanchi, or maybe it was a little bit of something else. I think it was Nahanchi where it first actually went, oh shit, that's what this is. And I just especially the way my school, because I learned Nahanchi through the Shorin Ryu school, and we were just so like, you know, well, once you become blah 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 Dan, the kata will make sense. So, well, it doesn't look
mhm.
like it makes sense to that guy, and he's a sixth Dan. So, like, where's that actually start? Um, and yeah, like the first time we went through those first few moves in Naihanchi, I just thought like, oh, now like all of the things start to make sense. And I mean, I was a pretty quick convert to the
Mhm.
karate as a close range, almost grappling system. Like I was a pretty quick convert to that. No experience with it at all, mind you. Like I didn't even know what an arm drag or a clinch was. Um, but I've found the process of that absolutely fascinating and super eye-opening because karate makes so much more sense looking at it through that lens. Um, and actually through that has provided me a whole other outlet for connecting the Goju Ryu and the Shorin Ryu stuff. Because you look at that through once you're sort of in a clinch or in a close range thing, um, the application of what you're actually doing and then stepping outside that and looking at the solo representation of that thing, it makes it really clear um, how each of those two sort of families of karate chose to stylize those movements,
Yeah.
which helps to connect the underlying application of what's going on for me. Um, yeah, I think, and also it's just such a mental exercise, and frees up the idea that everything is a specific thing,
Mhm.
and actually nothing is a specific thing, but rather an option. And one option connects to another option and connects to another thing. And it's like, this is the idea of karate and kata alone, like being a system of fighting, which we all sort of learned. We heard that phrase from early on, but it doesn't make much sense when all
Mhm.
you're thinking about is like point fighting. Well, that's a very weird way to describe this because it's basically just shitty boxing with some kicks. Like that's weird. Um, and not to down the or diminutize the value of sport karate because it's a really impressive thing in and of itself and super athletic, and it's a sport like anything else is, right? Like it's
Mhm.
highly limited by its rule set, but really impressive within it. Um, but the like fighting system thing just didn't make sense until seeing kata looked at through that lens. It was like, okay, now I get that.
Mhm. Do you think that I always wonder, and I hear from people who are talented with the music creation and music. I'm deaf as a wood, so I cannot relate in any form to it. But I have few friends who are composers, and like you, you creating your music, you fixing people's music, you teach singing and so on. Is that there's a connection between the musical mind and the martial art mind, like rhythm, creating the songs. I don't know how to, I
Hmm.
cannot imagine it because that's not me. But
Yeah.
is there something between, you think?
Um, Good question. I would, at least for me, I would I would suggest that the link is in the like the type of logical thinking that because for like music for me, I look at it more through the sort of like mathematician, computer scientist music link, which is
I have
another, yeah.
nothing to do with those either. So
Yeah, yeah. So like there's a certain way, and like your wife and I might be able to have a really interesting conversation about that. But there's a way that the brain works and accesses a type of logic that works really well for mathematics and computer science, which
Mhm,
also seems to link to music.
mhm.
Um, and I think it's probably that link that also um, exists in my martial arts. But to try and find a really eloquent way of describing what that feels like or how it operates within me, I'm not sure I could do. Um,
Because when I observe you and I love sparring with you because you're giving me a good run for my money, and every week you are better. And what I notice, this is just my observation, might be completely wrong, maybe I'm making up in my mind, but you've got a very good skill of observation and getting, I would say, between the beats. So you're catching me on things that I don't realize I'm doing, but you're seeing it like in between the frames. Like on last Tuesday, I was analyzing how did you manage to get the spin takedown on me, and somewhere I must have flared my elbow, not realizing,
mm,
and you picked up on that note. So my my imagination, what goes in your head, which is always very relevant, right, and
yeah.
spot on, is that you've got like because my son is learning music, so I observe him sometimes, and music for me, it's got the clear separation and beats, right? And
Mm,
you see a movement in those beats, and you can get it on half beats and enter your techniques between my techniques and catching me. And I had that impression quite a few times sparring with you that you are very, very good in observing those movements between. big movements, so small openings,
Mhm.
which is very impressive and gets me envious a little bit. Do you think that might be a kind of
It could
something
be.
like that?
It could be. I mean, one of the possibly the most prevalent part of my job at this moment in my career is editing vocalists. And so my job is to just listen to a performance and on a super granular, like crazy minutia level, and fix that performance to make it be like correct, but
Hmm.
not sound like I was there doing that. So my specialty is like going in after the fact and working on live shows, sometimes of like big pop stars and stuff, and just making sure that any little mistakes or things that the record label or whoever doesn't want out in the world, fixing those things. Um, I mean, probably lots of music purists are now sitting here like griping about the fact that this is a job, but sadly it is.
Yeah.
Um, so my job is to just sit there and just dive into the granular. And a lot of people can't do that. I know from a
Hmm.
fact, like with my colleagues, that they don't have the ear or the specific um, attributes to be able to pick apart something on a really fine level and recognize those things. That particular level of observation is probably what's happening.
Hmm.
Like when I'm sparring, I'm kind of doing exactly what you just described. So it's interesting that you see that from the other side. I'm recognizing patterns in the way that people are moving and looking for any vulnerabilities in the pattern of their movement and then finding ways that I can use that to my advantage. Um, and for whatever reason, naturally, I guess, so just genetic thing, I tend to be quite fast
Hmm.
and I can make my body do the thing that I want it to do. Like I don't have a big lag time between deciding something and doing it.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, maybe that's also just from training really young, this whole like shut your brain off and just let yourself do what it needs to do kind of thing.
Mm.
I've always aspired to that skill. So um, yeah, and when I started paying more attention to that, the sparring started slowing down, even though the actual tempo of it hasn't slowed down, but through processing it, it's almost like I'm seeing it happening in slightly slow motion.
Hmm.
It's a sort of matrix shit where like certain things like my brain is going, oh, like this is now happening, and so I can take advantage of that, whatever. Um, yeah, and I think that I don't, you know, that maybe that's just a thing my brain does, and it happens to work both with my music job and in martial arts in that way. I don't know, but I mean, being super analytical like that is definitely a thing of for me,
Mm.
just generally.
Yeah, well, it works, so keep it up,
Mm.
and that's what you said about that, um, not having a lag between the decision or just making decision on the spot is as well impressive and frustrating fighting with you because for me it feels like I'm fucking PC from the 60s and you are you are a laptop from modern times. I'm kind of going like, "Oh, I'm gonna do this," and then you do something and then I'm going, yeah, but he's gone. So this is impressive, right? But yeah, but it's really nice to have people like yourself, Sam, the little Sam, Martin, Gary, that everybody brings completely different, unique set of skills.
Yeah.
Even like you, we both noticed Gary is at the moment injured,
Mm.
but having his feedback on the side, it helps so much.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
so
yeah, he approaches everything from through a different lens. I think that's what I like so much about the club is that everyone's background is just different enough that you're getting all this different input. And like if one person's approach to something doesn't work, the guy standing right next to you has a slightly different take on it and his thing connects with you or whatever. It's really cool. instead of this, old school approach of like, but this is how it has to happen. Everything has to
Mm.
be perfectly precise like this, or else it's wrong.
Yeah,
It's very, very freeing way of looking at the training.
yeah. I was actually thinking about it after Tuesday because I looked at the people and we had Gary Jiu-Jitsu,
Hmm.
Chi Seikijuku, Mike who just joined in, Shotokan, you, Shorin Ryu, Goju Ryu,
Mhm.
myself, kind of Shin Ai Do, and we all doing different but the same. So
Mhm.
one karate, but different expressions,
Mhm.
and everybody learns from each other instead of trying to conform others to one proper way, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like a melting pot of ideas and techniques and see what works, right? Because
Yeah.
I think I like, which might sound a bit cocky, but what I like about myself that I don't need to enforce my ways of people, and I like observing stuff. And I'm stealing stuff from you. If I like something, I take it. If I see something like the other day got me with his bloody spinning back
Yeah.
fist. So you take that because that works in different situations and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So I like that about the club that we are not having that fragile ego of somebody that's a different, somebody that's better than me. And I think that transpires to everybody in the club. And we've been very
Mhm.
fortunate to not have much of a drama in the club.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Everyone, you put the you put the outcome first, and then find your own way to achieve the outcome. And I mean, your experience blending like with the wrestling blended with karate, and you I mean, your I watching you do stuff is incredibly inspiring because it's all the stuff that I always saw really great people do, but never teach you. Like
mhm,
you see some seminar and everyone that you watch where you go, "Oh, that guy's a badass." He's doing all the kinds of things that you're doing, but you're not in an approachable way where that person can teach you how to do that stuff.
mhm,
And like the very first class, I feel like with you, it's like, oh, you see this really badass thing that you've always wanted to know how to do? This is how it works.
mhm,
And it's like, oh, this is all the stuff that I've always wanted to know that nobody teaches you how to do. Um, and because you have such like a varied experience in the way the body moves and the body works, and you yourself are not bound by like one particular way to do stuff. I feel like you have a really good knack for helping a wide array of students to be able to access an outcome through a means that works with their body. So like the way that you teach me stuff is different from the way that you teach someone else something because you can see what things people can take on board
mhm.
and create and get to that final outcome. And that doesn't feel like the typical, it's certainly not my experience of the karate um, model.
You see, now you spark up my imposter syndrome coming here. Yeah.
Yeah, but all things being equal, I think that's what makes people be better.
Mm.
Because if we didn't have that, then what would motivate you to improve, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
If you weren't able to look at yourself critically and figure out all the things that you wish you did better, you wouldn't try, I guess.
Mm.
Um, but that doesn't always make that comfortable.
No, no. It's find yourself comfortable in uncomfortable, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Um, that's why I'm going and training and being handed my ass every week in the BJJ because it's
Mm,
something that used to make me really uncomfortable. But you have to accustom to things, and training boxing or whatever, sparring with Tommy, being
mm.
thrown about by bigger people and stuff like that. This is all that kind of builds me and keeps me in check so I don't have my ego inflated because I could go, I'm teaching people around the world. Look at me. I could sit in a corner and tell you guys, oh, you just do this kata there.
Yeah,
you'll
yeah,
be better, right?
yeah.
Um, what are your goals for the future in your karate?
Uh, I mean, I took so many years off that when I came back to school, back to the club to train, I mean, it was like it was like I was just living in somebody else's body,
Hmm.
notably a body that did not work. Um, I mean, I was always really active and able when I was young, and I really took for. I mean, we all take for granted what you can do in your teens and 20s. Um, but I really came face to face with that once I came back to training because I mean, just the hips don't work, the shoulders don't work. Um, Weird strength imbalances and things in my legs that just I just took for granted but were easy to do, and now they're just not. Um, Tissues that like my fingers just always hurting and like just stuff always hurting in ways that it didn't used to. So one thing that I'm very keen to do is just like slowly bring back like the condition of my body. I don't ever expect to be able to do what I could do when I was 21,
Hmm.
but I would like to be able to do what I can do without feeling like I need to go to the hospital afterwards, which is what it feels like some days. Um, so getting my my connective tissue and all that stuff like more nimble and resilient again, so that I can train effectively and not feel like I want my body to also like live up to what's happening in my mind. And at the moment, my mind is many steps ahead of what my body can keep up with.
I
So
think that's
that's
the I think that's the everybody brain, right?
yeah, I think so. Um, but that's one thing. So I mean, just having patience and moving slowly, to to not get too far ahead of myself and get myself physically back to where I'd like to be. Um, I don't know. I used to, in my old school, I used to teach a class,
Hmm.
um, which I quite liked. In my real life job, um, I teach a lot of like workshops and master classes, and I'm the music director for a few productions and stuff. So I'm in that role of sort of teaching quite a lot. Um, so I feel comfortable in it, and I think I'm decent at that thing. I don't at the moment feel like I don't feel like I have enough experience under my belt immediately to teach a class like on a regular basis. I could step in and teach a class,
Hmm.
but I don't feel like I have access to a deep enough or wide enough breadth of knowledge that I could create like a many month long syllabus to help a class of people progress and stuff. Um, but I'm not ruling that out as a thing in the future,
I
because
hope so.
I do enjoy it.
I hope so. I'm really hoping that I was actually talking with Martin about it on after Tuesday that it would be nice to see you if you can get some classes and open up your own club because like I said, I think technically you are above anybody in the club, including me. And it's just to be more comfortable with it. I think
Mm,
that's the only thing which holds you back. I don't see the reason why you couldn't teach. Maybe not the super advanced class, but the
yeah,
beginners easily.
yeah.
But I just remember you told me something once uh, that only now you feeling that you could handle yourself
Mm.
on the street. Do you think is that because of the amount of sparring we do, or is it overall the take on karate?
I think it's three things. Obviously, I've thought about this before. I think it's three things. One, the process of having my son and feeling so vulnerable and just emotionally fragile through that process. I mean, you don't no, I don't think anybody plans to have a disabled child, and
Mhm.
you can't predict the effect that that will have on you until you're in it. Um, and that kind of like unwound me a bit emotionally. And so for a while, um, that was an issue. Also, like the way my job worked and other just kind of like the way my life was not moving around at all. I ended up being having loads of injuries and just things like I had this anterior pelvic tilt problem that led to a glute stop firing, which led to my quad stop working. I mean, just my legs just completely unraveled on me over the course of a few years. And I found myself walking around with my son and like not really being able to walk properly and knowing that like if I had to pick him up right now and run away from somebody who wanted to do us harm, I don't think I could do it.
Mhm.
And that was the first time in my life that I ever felt like that. And it was really, really disarming and very uncomfortable for me. That was another contributing factor actually to finding a school.
Mhm.
Um, because I thought I've got to find something to get my legs working again. And my body knew how to do karate my whole life. Maybe if I start doing that again, all the muscle memory will come back and things will start working. Um, and it certainly wasn't an immediate change, but then through training, getting my body working again, getting my emotions feeling more regulated and having an easier way of processing all that stuff that was getting pent up. So calmer, more capable, and then just the experience of having people throw punches at me and grab me
Mhm.
several times a week um, takes away it takes away a bit of that edginess and the fear of what that experience will be like
Mhm.
because you know what it's like. Um, so I definitely think the consistent sparring, like a lot of credit goes to the consistency in sparring because
Mhm.
that's just a thing that you can't train until you train it.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know, and
But
we're
I
not,
noticed. Yeah, cool.
yeah, we're not clobbering each other in school or anything, but you know, getting tapped in the face and being able to keep your eyes open when someone's whipping punches at your face
Mhm.
creates a comfort with danger that you can't replicate until that's happening to you.
Yeah, and I've noticed a huge difference in your facial expression actually. When we used to go on the floor, you've been all like really tense and really
Mm,
focused, which now you just relax and just getting on with the job.
yeah,
And so you can see that quite what's the word for it? Lost the word, but being all the time in that environment creates just relaxation. It's like with everything, you're going to a new job, you're stressed. Two
yeah,
months later, I'm just doing a job, right? I don't
yeah,
think about
yeah.
it anymore. So
Yeah, yeah, you have to acclimatize yourself to the pressure and to the experience. I mean, I used to find the groundwork thing. I mean, I'm definitely not comfortable with it now, but I used to find the groundwork thing like a bit paralyzing
mm,
because I was never put in that position before. And if I was, it was as a child where I was genuinely in danger. And
mm.
so it was not a comfortable feeling at all. And so it took a while to process that stuff and um, it some of it's consistency and just having it done to you, but then also having any clue of what to do, having any awareness at all makes a massive difference because if you have no clue, you're just super vulnerable.
Yeah.
Whereas at least if you practice and realize like, oh, you know what, if I get thrown on the ground, I should probably cover my face. Even just having a few basic impulses uh, at your disposal makes you feel way more comfortable because you feel like you have any kind of armor to put up at all to keep yourself
Mm.
safe for a moment, to collect yourself and start thinking about a way to protect yourself.
The word I lost it was exposure. through the
Exposure.
exposure.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the one.
Yeah.
So now, I do know the words, I just don't remember them. Okay, guys, if you would like to support the channel, you can have a look at Nick's t-shirt, my t-shirt. You have to say something, I think, because he's gonna be switching cameras.
Oh, right.
So if
Sorry. Yeah,
yeah,
it's the sparring, light sparring to the death. Love this
this
t-shirt.
is I was saying in the club. Those who listen to the audio, the sparring t-shirt and commentary health t-shirt on our website, on the Karate Health website, or link down below, or on the hub at the top of the screen if you're watching that on YouTube. And yeah, best way to support us is to watch another one, listen to another one, and spread the news and share it to your friends. Nick, thank you very much for your time, and I see you tonight.
Sounds good. Thank you, Liz. Nice to talk to you, man.
Cool.